Next Tuesday, May 19th, is a big day for close to 100,000 candidates across the Caribbean as they write the English A Papers 1 and 2 examination. For many candidates, English A is a dreaded subject and they go into the examination with a lot of apprehension. But today, we hope to quell some of your fears as we give you some tips to assist you in the examinations next Tuesday. Good morning to all joining us this morning on this webinar on English A examination tips. We are glad that you have taken the time to be part of this event. With me is Dr. Joyce Stewart, an experienced educator, a long-serving CXC resource person in English, and someone who holds English dear to her heart. The fact that she has given up her Saturday morning to be here is an indication of this fact. So, whether you're joining us from Orange Walk in Belize, where it is just 8:30, or in Savlemana in Jamaica, where it is 9:30, or New Amsterdam in Guyana, where it is just about 10:30, welcome. For the next hour, we hope you will be an active participant and ask a lot of questions, make comments, and interact with us. To participate, listen to Dr. Stewart and I, and if you have any questions or comments and you wish to answer, please type them in the space provided at the bottom left-hand corner of the monitor. Dr. Stewart, you have been a teacher of English for many years. Can you tell us a little bit about your teaching career?
Good morning, everybody. I won't give you too many details about my teaching career because you'll start wondering how old is she. But I have been teaching longer than any of you have been alive. Let's put it that way. I've taught at secondary school, I've taught at the university, and at Teachers Training College. So I hope I can give you the kind of tips that you need.
Okay, so let's go right into this, Dr. Stewart. And as we said, English A Papers 1 and 2 next week, Tuesday. I actually met quite a few young ladies on the road this morning who were heading to lessons, believe it or not, at their various schools for last-minute instructions and practice from their teachers, not just for English, but for other subjects as well that are happening next week, because next week is considered to be one of those critical weeks where what we call high-stakes subjects are taking place next week. If we may start off generally, Dr. Stewart, what are some of the common mistakes you see students making repeatedly?
The biggest mistake comes from a failure to read the instructions on the questions carefully. All of them, from summary right through to the final argument. But let us take it one at a time and start at the top with question 1, which is summary. One of the things I would like you to do over the next few days is to make sure you understand the meaning of the word summary. Unfortunately, many students choose to tell a story that is similar to the passage that they're given for summary. Some students simply copy the entire thing. Some students copy the first 120 words. Happily, most students attempt to summarize the passage. So here's the tip I would give you. Read the entire passage at least twice. Move away from it. Take your pencil and write in the space provided for rough work what you think or what you have understood as the main things being said in this passage. Don't look at the text. Try to put them all down. Now go back to the text to verify that what you have is correct. And a common mistake would be to assume that the first sentence in every paragraph is a topic sentence. This is not true. Writers who are good at what they do will put their topic sentence anywhere in the paragraph. So don't be fooled into thinking that that first sentence is the one you're going to pull out. The second problem people get is instead of reading it, understanding it, and writing what they understand, they attempt to copy exactly what the passage says in that first sentence for each paragraph. And then they'll join it up with an and or a but or such like. No, you won't get a summary that way. You will get some recognition for having chosen the points, but you're going to score very low on language because the language is supposed to be your language, and you're going to score very low on structure because you have to, in some ways, change the structure, keep the relationship between points, but change the structure in order to be able to put it down in 120 words. I would like if you were to ask me some questions now on summary. I don't want to assume that you understand me. So, first question?
Okay, so while we wait on the questions, I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
So you said that the students have 120 words. The summary has to be done in 120 words. If they write more than 120 words or significantly less than 120 words, are there penalties?
If you write less than 120 words, you have penalized yourself because you have not understood all that you should have understood and drawn attention to. If you go over the 120, we penalize you because we stop, excuse me, as near as makes sense to that 120. What I mean is, if your last sentence has 15 words in it and 120 ends at half of those words, we just read down to the full stop and give you the mark.
Okay, we have two questions. One from Jordan, and his question is, what is the best way to identify a topic sentence? And we'll just tell Sherry Peters to hold on a while, and we'll get your question to Dr. Stewart in a minute.
The topic sentence is the thing that stands out from everything else. It's a summary statement of a paragraph. Suppose I was describing the new CXC building, and I'm on the inside, so I'm looking at offices. I could describe one office separately, two offices, three offices, but I would choose to say the offices in the building are commodious, softly colored, and comfortable. Then I could go on to say the office of the English lecturer is, the office of the French lecturer is, and then detail each one. I believe you should see that the first one that covers the appearance of all the offices would be my topic sentence. So in the paragraph, it is that general sentence, which is then expanded on in more detail by a number of other sentences.
Okay, thank you very much. From Sherry Peter asks, can you use some of the words from the passage as you answer the summary?
Yes. If there are technical terms in the passage, you need to use them. If there are dates, if there's proper nouns, then you will need to use the words in the passage. You should avoid trying to quote. Tell me what the words you want to quote. Tell me what those words mean, rather than quote. But yes, you can use words from the passage.
All right, another question from Kristen Ragu, and I guess this is one of the main challenges in summary, is that you have so much information that you want to put in there. He's asking, how do you decipher what is important and what you should keep for the summary?
When you were learning to do argument and exposition, you were introduced to the idea of a thesis statement, the idea that holds your whole paper together. And if you've found that whole idea, so the passage, the whole passage you're reading is about ways of celebrating Christmas in the Caribbean. The thesis statement would be, Christmas in the Caribbean is an exciting time celebrated in a variety of ways. Then you would have individual topics. You would look in one paragraph at how the East Indian community deals with it, how the Creole community deals with it. You could go from religion, how the Roman Catholics put it, how the Pentecostal churches put it, and each paragraph would take the view of a different group. And because you've done that, you know you're focusing throughout the whole thing on ways of celebrating. So you look for that idea and use it to keep your passage going.
Okay, so while we wait on other questions, one of the big things in the paper, too, I think, is the short story. This is actually huge because CXC also offers a regional top award for the best short story in conjunction with the University of the West Indies And part of the prize for the best short story is a full scholarship to the university to study whatever you wish to study. What are the important elements in writing a short story?
Where do I start?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. Currently, we give you two ways of approaching a short story. One is we give you a photograph, and we ask you to respond to whatever that photograph stimulates. Recently, there was a photograph of a dilapidated house with trees around it, a very rural setting, and people enjoy themselves writing about exploring this house at night and vampire attacks and ghosts coming back and that kind of thing. So it is, what does that inspire you to do? The second one gives you a series of words, a sentence, a statement of some sort, and you're asked to write a story which includes those words. You are free to begin with that, to end with it, or to weave it in somewhere where it makes a lot of sense inside of the story that you have chosen to do. You need also to be aware of the concept of characterization. Every story should have a main character. But then, do you need 3, 4, 5, 6 other characters? Here's a state where a student will say, the main character is Jeremy. And by sentence 2, Jeremy went to a picnic. With him were Susan, Halcyon, Linda, Tom, Dick, and a whole other set of other names. And after you have put in all those names, you don't use those people again. Now, a story cannot afford all of those characters. You're going to have a main character, probably 1 or 2 others with whom that character interacts to solve a conflict. There's always a conflict. It can be an open conflict between people, or it can be something going on inside of you where you know you shouldn't do so-and-so, but you still have to go and do it, or still want to do it. Or you know you should respect your stepfather, but you really cannot stand him. The internal, what we call it, internal conflict, confusion inside. And you need to capture that. So you want character and you want conflict. And you want to work through how the whole thing develops. Call it complication. You may or may not come to a resolution. That is, you may not work it all out and then they went away and live happily ever after. You don't have to get there. You can leave your ending in a way that people are wondering, I wonder if this would happen or that would happen. Or I can end it whichever way I choose because the story was so inviting, so involving. And when you write your story, make sure you put in details. If this thing takes place in the park, give me words to show me the park. Just, if you've chosen the park, it's because it is important. Because it's deserted, because it has many trees, because people gather there normally, you've chosen it for a reason. So give me the park. Let me see it and feel it. If your character is ecstatically happy, I need to know it. Tell me words that show he's really happy. If he's miserable, use vocabulary that helps the reader to come into the story with you and experience what you're experiencing. And finally, do not go on and on and on and on. The rubric tells you 500 words. I think it's 500 words. But you don't want to go and give me 7 pages. The longer you write, the more you get into trouble. Because you're writing quickly, you're thinking quickly, and you may make grammatical errors or spelling errors. So you do not want to go on forever because you expose yourself some more. Hope that helped.
Okay, it sounds very good. So I picked up a few things that you would have said. I'll try and do a summary. I hope I can pass this.
Good.
So you talk about character, so you need some characterization. You talk about setting the scene, for example, the park and, the colors in the park, probably people who are there, or the colors of things. And color, in terms of some description, adding some color to what you're writing so that it is not, the person can visualize it by reading the short story.
Don't take color here to mean red and white and blue.
Sorry, I was being metaphorical since you're doing an English.
But let us. This color means atmosphere.
Right.
Good.
Right. So one of the things that we also hear from time to time is the whole issue of plagiarism, even within the short story, of persons looking at short stories from the past or taking a short story from a book or newspaper. How do you deal with that when you're dealing with the looking at reviewing the short stories?
I wish I could tell you the source, but I know there is a strong teaching that there is nothing new under the sun.
Right.
So any story you come up with will have been written in some version before. And as most of you are teenagers, you will have a different reaction to things from somebody like me, who I am a grandmother. So you will write these things into your story, and of course you think your story is original, and that is fine. We will reward you for how captivating the story is, how well executed, whether you've gone in a direction that we can follow, whether you've created suspense, how good your characters are, how much you make us feel, what you make us see. We're gonna grade you on that kind of stuff. Bring me back to the real question again.
Plagiarism.
Yes, plagiarism. We have unfortunately had experiences where students would have read short stories from various texts that they have in school, learned those short stories by heart, and then sat down in the exam to rewrite them. I cannot tell you off the top of my head if such students would fail. We don't have a hard and fast policy. We study each story and it's taken on its merit. If we can very quickly identify that this is taken from this book or that book and a story by a particular name, you may get some marks, but you're not going to pass. Your marks are not going to come high enough to make you pass. So I would, but you know a lot of things. You know many, many things. Trust yourself. Let your story flow from you. There are also people who will take a story, a format that they have discovered from somewhere, and they'll adjust it. That is fair. You've learned how to construct a story by reading, and we want to encourage you to read more. And then you can take that style and make it yours. So the character and the event belong to you. No problem.
Right. Ms. Spencer says, are you penalized for interpreting a picture for short story writing differently than the person who will be marking it?
Absolutely not. There are 100,000 of you. There's only a handful of us. And if you are somebody who reads, you will know that when you take up, you go to the library or you go to town or whatever and you buy your book, and you will always see, if you're observant, and I'm hoping you are, there are little bits of things that you can expect to find in almost every book. And all these books sell, and nobody puts them in jail for plagiarism. And nobody puts them in jail for being different. Marketers are trained to look out for ideas, for differences. All you have to do is make sure you tell a story and not write an exposition. And you have to make sure you haven't copied it from somewhere. Let me explain that further. There was a year when the picture was a dilapidated house. Students enjoyed themselves with it. There were lots of stories about people returning to the village and hurricanes and a variety of things that would cause this house to be. But this one student did an analysis of housing in the country and the need for politicians to make sure that we have adequate housing. That is not a short story.
Right.
That might be, if you speak loosely, what you call a newspaper story, but it is not a short story. So you're not going to get reward for that. But if you write a story which is imaginative, we want to see the imagination coming through, and all the events and everything related in where how they come to a resolution, everything follows sensibly from everything else, you're on safe ground.
Okay, we have quite a few questions that have came in all of a sudden from Shari Peter, who asked again, should you separate the summary into paragraphs?
No. A summary is a block. which draws the essence out of that paragraphed essay. If you maintain paragraphs, then you're not summarizing. Now, students go down the line and they take paragraph 1, they pull out the idea, they go to paragraph 2, they pull out, and each one they indent and create a paragraph format. The student is going to suffer under organization because the student hasn't learned that the summary does not have any paragraph topics. It is a summary of the whole.
Okay. Next question. Why is the photograph black and white? It's hard to read that way.
I should perhaps ask Mr. Sam to explain that. It's a highly technical thing, and color, if you use color...
It's very expensive.
And
the English, as I said in my introduction, for the English we have to do at least close to 100,000 papers, and to print 100,000 colored copies would increase the cost of the examination to you guys, and obviously CXC tries its best to keep its examinations cost at the minimum to you and your parents. So that's really the reason for the black and white photographs. We are very sorry about that. I apologize on behalf of CXC. Dr. Stewart is laughing. I have a couple more questions here. Welcome, Kevin. Yes, the topic is English A Examination tips, because we have the English A Examinations papers 1 and 2 next Tuesday. Kevin is just joining us and is asking what is the topic. For Richard, how should a person use an antagonist in a short story? This sounds like a very technical question, Dr. Stewart.
Well, the antagonist is part of your conflict. It's you and it's your uncle. You have one idea of how your life should be and one set of things, what you want to do, and your uncle stands in the way, has different views, holds all the money, and so he becomes your antagonist. And somebody who is perhaps a very good writer might make the protagonist and antagonist the same person. This is because that person is having a real strong conflict inside of him or herself, where one might want to, my mother would say, I'm in one mind to do so-and-so, and the other mind over here is telling me you can't do so-and-so because. So I have the two things juggling. More often than not, though, the antagonist is the other person with whom the conflict exists.
Okay, we have Joel asking couple questions in one. What is the best way to start these short stories? With an opening sentence and then a paragraph briefly stating our characters, or one paragraph including the opening sentence and a brief description? It's a mouthful.
What's your name?
Joel.
Joel, I'm not going to give you a prescription there. My suggestion would be, if you're very doubtful, get a book, an anthology of short stories tomorrow, and just leaf through, because the beginning of the story is you. It's how you want to interpret the thing. If I give you a way of introducing something, I'm killing off your creativity, and I am encouraging you to, just fit into my mold, but you're not me. So you need to come up with your own. And I really suggest that you look at some stories tomorrow.
Okay, Joel, so you have a little bit of homework there from Dr. Stewart. Is there a limit on how many descriptive words to use in the short story?
You have to have a feeling for what becomes too much. If you go on, it was a gorgeous day in which the wind smelled sweet and tasted wonderfully and the rivers were flowing, and it gets a little bit artificial. It doesn't ring true, so don't do it. But you want to create a setting. On a hot Tuesday morning, around 10 o'clock, everything changed for Tom. I've given you setting, and I've named my character, and I've given you a little bit of idea as to trouble coming up. So,
okay, and we have a question from Brandon. For the short story, if it ends unexpectedly, would CXC think it's unfinished and deduct marks if the story ends unexpectedly?
No, your story ends how you want it to end. And what you have written inside of the story prepares me to accept that seeming abrupt ending. But when I read it as a marker, I recognize that you have an open end. You do not want to dictate to me how the story would end. You want to leave the reader involved. So you do not have to, there's no prescription as to how you end your story.
Okay, it's very much like a lot of the movies we see these days, especially some of the series on television now, right?
Yes. And I know you watch TV, so
right.
You were familiar with the term cliffhanger,
Right.
in which sometimes the things, and all of the characters are up in the air, you don't know who's going to come back down.
Right. Why is it not safe to write long stories?
For the same reason which I explained earlier, the longer you write, the more errors you make. And let me add to that, when you're doing a short story, the longer you write, the more perhaps uninteresting you run the risk of making. Nobody wants to read a novel or a story in which every single thing is explained for them. We want to be involved. We want to feel tension and excitement and fear. And we want to like the story or not like the story because of the way how certain characters behave, how certain things turn out. So you bear that in mind. Is this too much? Is this watering down and explaining too much? Should I stop? Then maybe you're right. You should stop.
Okay, we have a couple questions, and let me say a special good morning to Halia Telesford. Good morning, Halia. However, we have a question from Yusuf Stafford. Yusuf has quite a long question, so I'm going to read the entire thing, Dr. Stewart, so you can probably help to for you to understand what he's saying. I have a genuine concern. Firstly, what are some ways through which I can develop a good plot? So he wants to know how can he develop his plot for the short story. And he said that he has a propensity to think of plot slowly. And secondly, how would one know that the plot that they have developed would satisfy the word limit? So quite a mouthful from you.
Let me start at the end. It is not the plot that satisfies the word limit. It is your development that satisfies it. Let's start from the top again.
Right. He said he has a propensity to think very slowly of the plot.
Right.
And how can you develop the plot?
I wish you were near me because I would ask you to define plot. But you're talking about a series of events beginning from some kind of stimulus, this one leading to that, and the next, and the next. And as one thing leads to the other, different characters are involved. You're bearing in mind that you want a nice short, tight story. So you're looking at 3 pages, possibly 4, no more. And you're going to say to yourself, it'll take this long to give me this part of the story. This event I want happen. I want meeting at the Esplanade. So I'm going to bring all my characters here. I want characters having a disagreement. Is that going to follow right after that, or should I bring it before? And when I look and I see all these different sections that I have here, maybe I have too many. If I leave this one out, this is where your rough page comes in. If I leave this one out, will it change where I'm going, or can I still manage to get what I want across? I hope you have been practicing up this plot thing prior to now, because it's kind of difficult to explain to you how to get it tight in a couple of words over the airwaves.
Okay. We go to the next. Well, he said he thinks very slowly in terms of the plot, but as you said, you're not quite sure what he means by plot.
But never mind that you think slowly. Take those few minutes that you think you're thinking slowly and work your plot down. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. That will help you to stick to the framework, and when you start, the story will actually flow, and it becomes a sensible piece of work. Take your time, let it come slowly if it comes slowly, put it down, and then the words will evolve.
Okay, from Halia Telesford, what tips would you give for persuasive writing? Any particular tips for writing a persuasive piece?
Let us use the word argumentative rather than persuasive. Let me explain why. You open today's newspaper and you see an advertisement. Is it argumentative or is it persuasive? It is more often than not persuasion, persuasive. But that's not what we want you to do in this exam. We want you to argue. If you're going to argue, you're using reasoning. You're using logic. You're saying, given this and that and the other, this will follow. So if you want to do an argumentative piece, at your stage, you are combining persuasion with argument. A popular thing that teachers use for their students is, imagine you are campaigning for a place on the students' council. Write your speech. You are persuading the people, the students that elect you, but you're persuading them by way of an argument. So you want to say, most of us come from the same background. I come from, and you say where you come from, etc. And then you say, because I have come from there, I know these things. Therefore, I am capable of arguing for you. I have used, the word is premise. I've used some statements, some claims that can be verified. And if I say, this one is a situation, and this is the other situation, it must follow logically that out of that will come this. My mother has no money. My mother lost her job. Obviously, we don't have much food. My father has won lotto. My father has a huge family. It is reasonable to say that his family will be demanding stuff from him. All right? Now, your next thing is, would he be right in giving his mother more than he gives his brother? Then you're going to argue. Because the brother has this or that, he does not need as much. The mother does not have this, that, or the other. Therefore, he should give his mother more. So you're following through on an argument, but you're using some words in there that persuade. You will say, he loves his mother, or his mother has always been generous to him. A few things of that sort that make my feelings come along with you. I see your reasoning, and I'm stressing the word reasoning, but I'm also looking at anything you put in that affects my emotions to make those reasons more acceptable.
Okay. All right, Talia, I hope you have noted the points from Dr. Stewart. You need some logic, you need some strong argument, as well as, I'm going back to that word, a little bit of color to make sure that your arguments are appealing. From Mr. Hunt, does CXC find stories with killing to be very strange?
We don't find them to be strange because my generation and the one right under me, that's the one before you, have done you a serious injustice. Everything we put on television or in the novels or in the cinema is violent. You've been fed that diet. However, to put it bluntly, we don't like those stories, and it is most unlikely that one of those stories will get Best Story Award. It doesn't call any longer for any great imagination to use, I call them a blood and guts kind of piece of writing. It takes far more skill and imagination to create something where human endeavor, human thought and struggle genuinely against life or with life and against people comes out without being violent. So my exhortation to you is clue into your creative side. Ignore all that killing and stuff out here and create a story that is satisfying without being terrifying.
Okay. Yeah, I do not like horror movies either. As it relates to summary, is it okay to include one or two examples in your summary?
One of the things that I learned eons and eons ago about writing a summary is that you do not include examples. You don't include examples because it's not the main part of the idea. So the conservationists will have talked about ways of keeping your soil from being washed away. and he will say, for instance, the Gabian box, and he will go ahead and describe the Gabian box. You have a decision to make. Does your summary benefit from saying there's a wide variety of methods for saving the soil, including Gabian boxes, or going to say that, for example, the Gabian box may be used to do this and that and that and that and the other? Mention the Gabian box, but you don't develop the example because it takes away from the space that you have to deal with the general approach to conserving the soil.
Okay. Moving right along from Tracy or John, does a story have to be plausible or can it be mythology?
Even mythology is plausible.
Okay.
You set up a situation in which the gods can, because they are gods, do various things. And therefore, when you read the story, you get this suspension of disbelief. Nice phrase you should remember later on.
Suspension of disbelief. Note that, guys.
And you are able, because the context has been created, you are able to understand what went on and accept it. You may not agree, but you accept it. That's a good story.
All right, so Christian Ragu has come back. He has taken you up on your whole idea of the protagonist and antagonist, and he's asking the question, how can you make both the protagonist and the antagonist the same person?
All right, let me go back to the idea with you. I'm a teacher. I may, to satisfy my mother, I may choose instead stop being a teacher and to become a nurse and blaming it on my mother. But somewhere as it develops, my mother says, really, it's up to you, because the qualities you need to be a teacher are the same qualities you need to be a nurse. You need to care, you need to plan, etc. So she started inside of me a bit of confusion. I was happily blaming her for making me get confused as to which one to choose. But now I understand it is all in my mind. So I have two Joyce Stewarts arguing, you will be an excellent teacher, you need to be a nurse. The teacher person may be stronger, so she's going to throttle the nurse person. But the nurse person is no wimp either. She will find ways of fighting back. So because I have these two parts of me that are fighting one against the other, I am still one person, but I could say that they're two different people, i.e. a protagonist and an antagonist, struggling to come to a resolution. And the longer I think about it, or the deeper I think about it, the closer I'm able to satisfy both parts of my character and settle it. And my story will come to an end with Joyce being a part-time teacher and a full-time nurse.
Okay. So just to remind folks that we are finishing at 11:30, and I have some other questions here. One of them has to do with how are cliches dealt with.
I would need a little bit more on that. This is cliches as used in the story.
So Jordan, can you clarify that question for Dr. Stewart? If you can repost your question, Jordan, and we can deal with it as we go along. Shanice Walker wrote, how to do summary writing. I think you would have dealt with that already, Dr. Stewart, in terms of the summary writing. And Tyler Wickham asked, what's the best way to approach the reading comprehension question? I don't know if you want to recap that. You had spoken something about the comprehension earlier.
I can do that.
Yes.
Reading comprehension, you have two different kinds of passages. One is the more literary, in which you can expect to have your metaphor and simile and beautiful descriptions, details, etc. And the other one is exposition, in which there's a thing that needs to be talked about, and it's taken in steps and disclosed as you go on. So the questions that relate to the first one, expect one or two questions that you can go straight to the text and find your answer. But expect more questions in which you are asked to deduce, infer, understand, criticize. The writer uses the word if 5 times in one paragraph. What is the effect of that on the reading of the statement? And your answer will be, most likely, it makes you doubt whether he's serious about what he's writing or not, or whether the answers that you get are real or the otherwise. That one is, you have to interpret. If the writer says this, and then he says that, what should the reader understand? This is where you're going to deduce. I could ask you, what techniques does the writer use to develop an idea? So you will know he uses cause and effect, or he uses comparison and contrast, or he uses illustration. And the other question, the more literary question, what does the writer achieve by identifying with the audience? No, that's not what I mean. How does the writer identify with his audience? And you will be able to look into things. He uses the word we. In paragraph 2, he often refers to us. Whatever things we see in there that show he's not separating himself from what we're doing. I'm going to kind of escape here by saying I would like you tomorrow, if you're at school, to speak with your English teacher on what we call the Bloom taxonomy. This simple, straightforward question, a range of questions right through to the ones where you have to really analyze what the writer is saying and how he's saying it and what words could possibly mean. That would help you to get different meaning, different understandings of the passage that you read. Again, though, a key function in those 2 questions is that you need to read the passage more than once.
All right, and Christian Radwood just wants to say thank you very much for answering his question earlier. We have, Sherry Peter has posted a couple of the questions, and she asked, how many points should you use to back up your argument?
Oh, you want me to deal with that now?
Yes.
There's no prescription on this, Sherry. I am aware that some teachers give their students a 5-paragraph plan. I'm not making any judgment on it, but I know that some people do this. You have an introductory paragraph. You have 3 paragraphs in which you develop a different point, or at least mention another point, and then you conclude. All of my training, research, etc., tells me don't do this to your students. But I also recognize that some students need that extra help. You personally must not feel bogged down in having to do 1 point or 2 points or 3 points. You can make a highly effective argument by developing a single point. And you can write your full length on that single point. You can make your argument by developing 2 or 3 or 4 other points as you go along. One of the things that you could do to improve your thinking is to rank your points, because time is also a factor in doing the examination. Rank your points. Which ones do you consider are the more powerful ones? Then maybe you should deal with them first to see how your time is going. And do you need to put in the others, or can you just stop where it hits really hard? If you only have 3 points, again you can rank the more gentle point first, and the clincher, the firm, strong one, coming last. Leave your reader with a good memory, a strong impression. Hope that helped.
Right. And what should the introduction to the argumentative writing entail? I know people say, some people like to use a quote, some people like to use a strong statement. Shari is asking, what should this entail?
That depends, Shari, on which question you choose. A popular question these days is to give a view expressed by one person, a view given by another person, and then you ask to support one person or the other. If you're going to support one person or the other, you remember you're not allowed to change perspectives, but you have to recognize that when the person says this, it is possible. But then this factor or that factor will weaken it. In other words, you acknowledge that this thing is being said, and then you show why it has very little to no merit, because you have the stronger perspective. How do you start this argument? One of the things that you could do is to give a background. People today are concerned about their diets. I'm going back to, I have a memory in my head about Usain Bolt and the whole thing of eating cassava and that kind of stuff. People have lots of discussions these days on diet, and are inclined to think that a diet of natural foods is better, much better, than processed things like pasta and white rice, etc. That gives me the background. Discussion with my grandmother and other people has shown that they live longer than we seem to live these days, and they are healthier. It therefore seems to be, now we come to a piece of statement, I think that's going to fuel my argument. It therefore seems that if we are going to become a healthy people, the older generation needs to teach the youngsters about how to grow and prepare the right kind of food. And in the next paragraph, you're going to show how perhaps cassava has within it all these various nutritious things, and it can be done very simply, and it's inexpensive. And then you go for the sweet potato, and you do what that is. And so you build up, and you explain each one, and see how it fits into that statement you made, that third statement you made in your first paragraph, is tying it all together for you. Don't step outside of what that statement invites, because if you do, you'll be moving away from the point. In short, have a view, a firm view, if the stimulus you're responding to requires you to argue for or against. Another question will say to you, express your views on. You're not expected to agree or disagree, but express your views on. And you will have a number of views that support a position, and you'll have a number of views that support the other side. And in your conclusion, you'll be saying, perhaps because of the number of things that we experience over on side A, it is better to do this, that, and the other than it is to do what side B says.
Okay. So Jordan has come back with the clarification about his cliche issue.
Yeah.
He is talking specifically about cliches used like to start a short story. For example, he said like an overused phrase that somebody uses to start a short story. If this sort of usage would result in the loss of marks.
It doesn't result in the loss of marks because it is only one sentence. What do you do afterwards? You could get very, very involved and excited in what you write, and the cliche disappears. A more striking and original start would be better, yes, and it wouldn't take off marks, but it would give you, if you have the more striking beginning, it lifts your story up to a slightly different level, so you could expect more marks. But it isn't that we look for the cliche and say, oh, he used a cliche, let me take off a mark. No, it doesn't happen.
A very simple question here. Any tips for finishing the exam on time?
Well, this depends on how you have trained yourself and how your teacher has influenced you in the classroom. You might look at the questions to see how the marks are allocated. There's not a serious difference anymore, but there was a time when you had 35 marks for a question and 15 for another. So you would want to do the 35 mark quickly. Just study that one and put it out of the way. If you want to rank the questions, maybe you put the two comprehension passages together, 15 marks each as a quick 30, and then do your story, and then do your argument, and then do your summary. People look at the summary because it comes first on the paper. They do summary first. If you think that has the most difficult part, you want to get it out of the way, put it and do it first. If you think it's the easiest part and you want to start easy, you do it and put it out of the way. It's entirely up to you. But what you have to sit down and work out is, if I'm doing comprehension questions, where I'm writing very short answers, not single word, but very short sentences, I'm going to look at the suggestion on the paper. There's a suggestion about how much time you should take. Follow it carefully. Let it guide you. Because this would have been drawn from experiences over time. That in order to plan out an essay, you need half an hour. Plan it and write it. In order to plan and write an argument, you need a little bit more than half an hour. Alright? So, you just need to talk with the teacher tomorrow to see what they think. But put your watch on your desk, look up at the clock, say no more than X time on this. If you have 15 minutes at the end, that is marvelous. Now you go back to all of your questions, you read them again, you may have time to write in a little extra point. We don't mind work that looks untidy. We just need to be able to follow where your points are coming.
Okay, folks, believe it or not, we only have 10 minutes remaining. And before I take the next question, I'm going to just remind the students and the teachers and the parents who are following us that you can give us feedback to the webinar on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/mycxc, as well as on our Twitter account using the hashtag CXC Exam Tips. And you can also let us know after the webinar, give us your complete opinion. There is a short 2-question survey. It's only 2 questions, so you can answer the 2-question survey. This is the first webinar we are doing of this type this year. We would have done some in the past on examination preparation tips, but this is the first one we're doing on a subject-specific webinar, and we'd like to get your feedback as well as to know what other subjects you would like to be featured in similar webinars. Now, Dr. Stewart, one of the questions I had for you had to do with the whole issue of keywords. From time to time, I hear teachers as well as my colleagues in the measurement and evaluation department talking about the importance of keywords. Can you tell us what is the importance of keywords and what are some of these keywords that are used in some of the questions?
Okay. The keywords that we worry about most, I think, come in section 2 with the comprehension. What effect is created by something? The word is effect. But students will just write, this thing is so-and-so. They just describe what something is. That doesn't give me the effect. Use a phrase from the passage to show that the writer understands. Now, a phrase is a very different thing from a sentence. It does not have in it a verb. It need not have in it a verb. So, but students will copy the entire sentence. We will say, give an expression that does so-and-so. The expression is not the whole sentence. So you have to read those questions carefully and give what they ask for. A phrase, an expression, or a quotation. Quote the words. Quote the words. If you say quote the words, you may need to quote the whole line because those are the words. More often than not, you don't need the whole sentence to do what you want. I'm speaking slowly because I'm trying to remember all the little things on the paper where there are words that could upset you. Summary we've already covered. A summary is what we ask for, not a story, not a rewrite. Summary is your gathering of the perspective and the supporting points on a topic that has been explored in writing. The story, I didn't touch on description.
Oh.
Description is the one that causes a lot of problems. Because we will say to the students, this thing has happened, these people have arrived. Describe what they saw and what they felt. And in many, many instances, students don't see that last part. They see, use these people, and they start these people at home. Bring them the journey, takes up most of the story, and then I get 2 paragraphs saying they saw this and they felt that. You need to zero straight in on what the description asks you to do. Describe what they saw and felt when they did so-and-so, arrived at such a place, etc. So we don't use a lot of the phrases that will, what my colleague here calls key phrases. We don't use a lot of them, I don't think. I don't think you'll want to find explain or justify or compare and contrast on any one of our papers, right? You're going to get straight up passages to read and understand and write on, or stories that you interpret and respond to the stimulus.
Okay. Again, reminding you that you can give us your feedback using our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/myCXC, as well as Twitter using the hashtag CXC Exam Tips. And you can also complete the 2-question survey on our website as soon as the webinar is completed. And we have 5 more minutes to go. We will take about 3 more questions. Someone has already asked a question, when is the math conference happening? I would let you know that we are working on that feverishly. And as soon as we have confirmed it, we will post the information on our Facebook page as well as on our Twitter account and on our website. In general, what would you say constitutes a good answer to a question? I mean, 2 or 3 key things that constitute any question on an exam paper. What would you say constitutes a good answer? I mean, you spoke about stuff like making sure you look at what the question is asking, and what would you say constitutes good answers to a question?
Let me go back to question 1, summary. There are a number of, let me call them tips, given to you at the beginning, at the top of the page. Write the summary in not more than 120 words. You'll be penalized if you go over 120 words. Your answer should include this, your answer should include that. These things are there for you. So an answer that follows the prescription and gives us what we asked for and all those little things that are put on there for you will be a good answer. A story that uses the stimulus. Now, we often get stories in which that set of words that stimulate the story get what we think of it as they are tacked on. They just wrote them into the last line, but they do not really inspire, guide, they're not reflected in anything that is written as the story develops. So an answer that makes sure it responds to the stimulus. When I was much younger and learning to write, one of the things that I was told is, when you have written a paragraph, go back to the top, look for the thing that you really want to write about, and then come back to your paragraph and ask yourself, is that relevant? And if it is, go on to the next one. If it isn't, find something to write in that paragraph that is going to ensure the relevance, and then move on. So an answer, whichever question you're looking at, that is relevant to what is asked is going to be a good answer.
Okay, my last question to you is, when we look at the question paper, there is normally on one side the marks allocated to particular questions. Mm-hmm. How should students use this piece of information in answering the questions?
Well, the biggest place you're going to see this in the English A examination is, again, in the comprehension section. Passage A will give you questions A, B, C, D, E, F, G, perhaps an H. And most questions carry 1 mark or 2 marks. There are places where the answer may be 2, but it's not 2 or nothing. We structure the thing so that you may score a single one. So if you are asked to quote 2 expressions that indicate happiness, and one of the ones you put is happy and the other one is miserable, we don't say 0. You get 1 mark for the one that works, and obviously 0 for the one that doesn't work.
Okay, final question to you from Chrissy. Chrissy asked Dr. Stewart if he could remind students about their grammar, vocabulary, and spelling. Briefly, we have 1 minute.
Very briefly, people, when you get into writing, you may make errors in grammar, etc. My advice is don't fret. Finish the paper, finish the questions, but you have planned your time, so you have those last 15 minutes or so. Now go back and read each question as though you were the teacher. Remember things like subject and verb agreement. Remember past tenses. There's not just one past tense, there's several. But if you're just comfortable with one, it's better than slipping into the present tense when you mean the past tense. All right? Punctuate. Go back and double check you put your full stops and your commas and your spelling. We don't pickle every little thing, but the whole picture is still important.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stewart, on behalf of all the students and the teachers and the parents and the region, really, who have tuned in this morning to listen to you on this. And I know for a lot of students, this has actually been very helpful for them for next week, Tuesday. They definitely, I'm sure, feel a lot more confident now. I can see that based on some of the posts that some of the students have made on our Ready Talk conference call today. I would also like to remind students before we leave to give us their feedback, and this is very important for future webinars. You go to our Facebook site, facebook.com/myCXC, as well as use our Twitter hashtag CXC Exam Tips. And please do complete the short 2-question survey so that we can know what your needs are going forward. I am Cleveland Sam on behalf of the Caribbean Examinations Council. Thank you very much for joining us today. Bye-bye.